Coming up on this episode of One-on-One Sports,
we dive into NFL free agency
to discuss some of the most confusing trades of all time
and talk some NCAA basketball.
All that and so much more.
And it all starts
right now.
Hello and welcome to this episode of One-on-One Sports. I'm Drew Gentry.
And I'm Ennis Warlick, filling in for our amazing hosts, Andrew Vandellis and Matt Holzapfel. It has been a great week in sports, but before we get to that, Drew and I are going to jump in with the quick hitters. Drug use is generally frowned upon by many sports organizations, but in the NHL, the use of marijuana to wind down after a day of practices or games is not uncommon in legalized states. There's still a ways to go with getting executives, other organizations, and fan bases on board with the idea. But Drew, what do you think?
So, first off, I do think we're going to see more use of marijuana in sports.
But the thing is, you cannot implement a rule until it is legalized in all, or at least states that have organizations, because then that becomes an unfair playing market. Because players can be, or teams can pitch the idea, hey, if you want to smoke after a game or anything, you can get away with it. You can come here, relax. That will be very beneficial to the state or the teams in D.C., California, Colorado, and however many states there are that have it. But the one reason I think that it's a big thing that need to be looked at is people in sports are getting addicted to opioids.
Right.
Opioids are a very dangerous thing, and you cannot overdose on marijuana. If the number is 1,500 pounds in a 15-minute span,
wow,
which is absolutely
That's
impossible.
Yeah.
You cannot inhale that much smoke first off.
And the thing that I think about is you look at all these NFL players, you look at all these basketball players, they're enduring an insane amount of pain and and it's just an excruciating schedule that just us regular people just aren't used to. And if you're feeding them all these pain meds, all of these things, and just saying, okay, go back into the game, it's unfair to just say they can't deal with it in a pretty civilized way that isn't going to necessarily kill them.
And Von Miller, which is the survey that's also part of the drugabuse.com or drugabuse.org, said the greatest amount of evidence for therapeutic effects of cannabis relate to its ability to reduce chronic pain. What do athletes suffer from? Chronic pain, especially in the NFL, NBA, and in the NHL, because their schedules are so enduring. There's so much hitting going on in football practice throughout the week in the NHL.
I don't see any advantage in cracking down on marijuana if you have all these athletes coming out after the fact saying, I was smoking the entire time.
It's never going to stop somebody from smoking. That's the thing. People who have drug problems and use drugs, they don't stop when they get to the NFL, the NHL, the MLB.
Josh Gordon, perfect example.
Perfect example. We hope he can get the help that he wants.
And that's a problem also. It might not even just be marijuana. It could be opioids. It could be all these things that are truly damaging to his system that he is struggling with, but because the NFL will not take a more moderate approach to it, it really hurts them in the whole sense.
Absolutely.
The Antonio Brown drama has finally reached its conclusion as he has officially been traded to the Oakland Raiders, and the Steelers received a 3rd-round pick and a 5th-round pick in return. Though this situation is resolved, Ennis, do you think this whole situation is the fault of Antonio Brown or the Steelers?
Both. Definitely both. This was one of the ugliest situations I think I've seen in a long time, possibly ever, in the National Football League. When you get a 3rd and a 5th round pick for arguably the best receiver in the league.
Not arguably, in my opinion.
I don't think it's arguably either, but I think when you get a 3rd and a 5th round pick for a player of Antonio Brown's caliber, it's a mess.
It's hysterical how bad they have gotten screwed over with their top 2 players in the last 2 seasons.
So look, I'm going to say this. Antonio Brown should have never gone public saying all of this stuff about Ben Roethlisberger having this owner's mentality, saying all this stuff like, oh, you're going to play by my rules. No. That's not how it works, AB.
No.
But at the same time, you look at the Steelers and you say, look, you made this culture. If Antonio Brown, I think Antonio Brown feeling this sort of freedom to say whatever he wants. Le'Veon, the freedom to just absolutely not play. Like,
Yeah, and
they established this culture.
Big Ben and the owner are both cancers, in my opinion. The owner said Big Ben has 53 children underneath him. You cannot say that about a team. And it's just, even Sammy Watkins got more value. The Steelers could have done better on this trade.
The Los Angeles Lakers announced on Thursday that they will be scaling back on LeBron James minutes during games for the season. Being all but officially out of the playoffs, the Lakers reason that as to keep LeBron healthy throughout his 4-year contract with them. Drew, what are your thoughts on this?
I like it. Keep tanking. Both of us are Laker fans
Right.
here. We'll fully admit that.
Absolutely.
If they can continue to tank, we can get more for AD. We don't have to give up as much for the
I mean, I don't think the Pelicans are going to do it regardless. But
a new owner, you never know what the possibility is.
You know,
and it's
right.
just injury plagues throughout the season. Ingram has only played 52 games. LeBron's only played 58. Lonzo's only played 47. Rondo's only played 32. The only person that's really been healthy all season is Josh Hart. That's really something to say about the staff and how they're cutting back minutes to prevent LeBron from getting hurt. And because they already have 2 of their young core out for the season, you can just tell they are giving up on this season.
This season was doomed from the start, and it's really sad to say because you looked at this roster at the beginning of the year and you said, wow, this team is a team that can contend.
This team can go to the finals. They might be able to sneak up on the
Warriors. They're not even going to make the playoffs, and they're losing by double digits to teams like the Suns. Just not a good look.
It's not great at all, and it's just they're trying this tank process. They weren't intending a tank, but I full-heartedly believe that Luke Walton will be gone. And that's another reason they don't want to give him any wins towards the end to give him any resume or credit to keep. And this is Magic saving his job in a sense because they're trying to get rid of everybody else.
And when you have all these reports coming out saying coaching staff wanted to keep Julius Randle, wanted to keep all these good players, and they just didn't do it.
They definitely didn't at all. The Lakers, they're going to have a lot to do this offseason.
Right.
After all the speculation about where Bryce Harper would end up, we finally know the Phillies, but not long after signing. Harper said that he wanted to recruit Mike Trout in 2020 when his contract ends with the Angels. The problem is now Harper is being accused of tampering, something the MLB stands firmly on. Is this something that should be considered tampering, or how do you feel?
Who cares? Who cares? Look. It's a player communicating that he wants to play with the best player in Major League Baseball. Now, look, is it considered tampering? Yes, technically speaking, yes.
It definitely.
It constitutes as tampering. But look, it's a player asked a question about playing with the best player in Major League Baseball.
It's the same thing that happened to LeBron after the AD situation. It was, he was like, ask me about Kyrie Irving. Ask me about Luka Doncic. Ask me.
Of course, you want to play with those players.
Whenever he signed, originally he said, "There's a dude that comes off the books in 2 years." He never said who. Everybody speculated it was Mike Trout, and then the radio station in Philadelphia finally pushed him to say, "If you think I'm not going to want to recruit Mike Trout, you're crazy."
Because he would be.
Because again, you said who doesn't want to play with the best, especially when you're trying to establish a winning culture.
Absolutely. The quick hitters may be over, but we still have plenty more on our show, including March Madness, NFL free agency, and NBA awards. Stay tuned to hear me talk NFL free agency with Christian Carmen. NFL free agency is about to kick off, and what better way to examine free agency than with our NFL expert, Christian Carme. So, Christian, what teams have shocked you with the moves that they've made so far?
The Indianapolis Colts and the lack of moves that they have made. They've had the most cap space in the NFL, $93 million. They've only signed Devin Funchess. That is so underperforming of what I'd expect to Indianapolis Colts. They were 7th offense. They had the 7th best offense in the NFL last year. They had the 11th ranked defense. Andrew Luck is finally showing some signs that he's back and he is ready to lead this team into a deep playoff run. And you signed Devin Funchess.
One of the most shocking things I saw was they weren't even in on the Le'Veon Bell race.
No, and you could have easily signed Le'Veon Bell. You could have signed one of these Trent Brown, Trey Flowers, one of these amazing defensive or offensive tackles to help your line play. No, we're just going to sign Devin Funchess. It's fine. It'll be fine.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
So what players would you expect to underperform with their new teams?
Landon Collins, just because his contract is so high. He signed for 6 years and $84 million with the Redskins. Congratulations, Washington. You signed a safety who can't play safety. I mean, he's literally a box safety that doesn't perform well in coverage. I mean, all he really does, I mean, he's a good hybrid linebacker, and it's fine that way, but safeties are considered in the modern NFL to be sort of center fielders who can play pass coverage very well and is kind of like playing like a Patrick Chung sort of role for the Patriots.
So you don't think he'll revitalize that Redskins defense?
I think he'll be okay. I mean, the Redskins will have to form a defense that kind of matches his skill set.
Did have, I shouldn't say revitalize. They did have a good defense last year.
Yes, and he'll definitely help, but not for the contract. That's what I'm saying. He's going to underperform his contract for sure.
So moving on to the last question. Biggest impact with their new team, who do you think makes
Whoever
that?
signs Le'Veon Bell is going to be so set. Because, I mean, well, apparently it's down to the Jets and the Ravens. I mean, we don't know, but apparently it's down to the Jets and the Ravens. Whoever gets him, I mean, they both have very young quarterbacks. It's going to help take the pressure off these rookie quarterbacks. They're going to be a lot more safe. I mean, he's had 42 touchdowns in 62 career games.
So let me ask you a question then. Le'Veon Bell sits out an entire season, has no experience, well, I shouldn't say experience, but any playing in the actual NFL, because it's a lot different between working out and actually playing in an NFL game.
Right, but look at Leonard Fournette. You know, look at Todd Gurley. These running backs get really tired, and it really helps a running back who has a lot on his load to really take a year. I mean, to literally take a year off and not be playing at all. I mean, I think he's going to be revamped. I think he's going to be amped to get back on the field.
Gotcha. Well, that's all the time we have left from the Gridiron. When we come back, we'll be joined at the desk by Drew and David to break down one of the most exciting tournaments of the year, March Madness.
March Madness is nearly here with Selection Sunday right around the corner. Some teams are on the brink of elimination and others are looking to make their last push in hopes of punching their ticket to this year's tournament. I'm here with David Flint to discuss this year's March Madness bubble teams. So David, what is your team that can sneak its way in and make a push?
Alabama, I think of the most notable teams that can make a deep run, has a bit of a battle on their hands in the SEC tourney, but I think they can go deep. They really don't have a single player that carries them. They all kind of share the load, which is good. They only have one ranked win in about the past month, which was over South Carolina, but obviously Avery Johnson, a veteran head coach at the helm, knows what to do in these pressure-packed situations. They may get lucky with a couple wins over some top SEC teams. They certainly have that talent, too.
They have only 3 scorers in double digits. So does that scare you for their tournament hopes, even just in the SEC tournament?
Actually, I think their defense is a little more of a question mark. In watching the Alabama versus Auburn game that happened last week, they jumped out to a lead of, I want to say, over 20 points, and Auburn just stormed back in the second half like Alabama forgot how to play defense.
So for Alabama, who do you think that team's going to be led by, Hall or Lewis Jr. come tournament time?
It's going to be Dante Hall, I think, just because his skill set is a little wider than Lewis Jr.'s is, but I wouldn't be surprised if both of them have a very big chunk of the payload.
All right, so going from who's going to make the surprising run of the bubble teams, who's going to be left at home watching on TV instead, or going to the NIT at least?
Staying in the SEC? Sorry, Gator fans, you're going home. Florida has never made the SEC tournament in the season where they have more than 14 losses. Unless they win the SEC tournament, which I consider highly, highly unlikely.
Most likely.
They've got to get through Tennessee, Kentucky, LSU, Auburn, whoever knows who else. They're going to have at least 50 losses.
But they have the same record as Alabama. Do you think that Alabama has more notable wins, or do you think that Florida just is going to collapse in the SEC tournament?
I don't see the leadership with Florida that they're going to need to move on in the SEC tournament. If Billy Donovan was still at the helm at Florida, maybe I'd say otherwise. But I don't think the coaching staff or the current crop of players that Florida has is up to the caliber to make a big enough impression in the conference tourney to move on to the big dance.
So going from these bubble teams, a team that's already punched their ticket in Murray State, led by John Morant, who scored 36 points in their championship win over Belmont. How far do you think that the Racers can go, and can Morant carry them through the tournament?
Don't get me wrong, John Morant is an unbelievable player, and he's going to get a chance to share that in the NBA come a couple months from now. That being said, he cannot carry Murray State the entire way. The Racers will stall out in the round of 32. Yes, that was an intentional pun.
I figured.
But looking at the BPI, they don't even have the top BPI in the Ohio Valley. Belmont does by one spot.
Yeah.
49 versus 50.
That's why that's a toss-up, I believe. If this Ohio Valley is going to be a two-team conference, before this Belmont was the 12th seed expected to get through, and so you do have the Racers winning in their first matchup if they're a 12.
Yeah, and I think in that situation, as a 12s versus 5 tend to be a lot of toss-ups sometimes. I don't know why that is.
That's the hardest bracket. More 12s beat 5s in the NCAA. So John Morant, definitely a name to look out for come March Madness, especially since his ticket's already punched. And I think I hear the final buzzer. When we come back, Ennis will sit down with Will to discuss this year's NBA awards candidates.
NBA season is winding down, and contenders for NBA awards are starting to emerge. I'm joined at the desk by Will Burns to discuss what players around the NBA will take home some hardware at the end of the season. So, Will, who you got for most improved?
For the most improved player, I have Pascal Siakam of the Toronto Raptors.
Good choice.
This is a close race, similar to the Defensive Player of the Year, the MVP. You can make an argument for some other players like Buddy Hield, D'Angelo Russell. They're also having great years.
Right.
But Pascal Siakam is arguably the second best player on the second best team in the league this year, the Toronto Raptors. He's grown immensely from his second season. He was averaging 7 points last year, 4 points in his rookie year. Now he's averaging 16 points per game. His three-point percentage has gone up 15%. That's not something you see very often from a guy in his third year. He's averaging 16 points, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists per game. And he was the 27th pick just 3 years ago in the same draft as guys like Ben Simmons, Jaylen Brown, Brandon Ingram, Buddy Hield, Jamal Murray. You can make the argument that this guy should have gone top 5,
Certainly.
and he was drafted 27. So the fact that he's improved this much has shown a lot.
Siakam certainly has taken a jump. So who would you take for Defensive Player of the Year?
Defensive Player of the Year, I have Paul George for one reason, and that's because he deserves an award this year in the NBA.
Really?
He is the best two-way player in the game right now, and that's given Kawhi Leonard, LeBron, who's had a bit of an off year, but he is the best two-way player in the NBA right now. He has a case for most improved player, MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, but I think he does deserve Defensive Player of the Year. He's number 1 in steals per game. He's number 1 in loose ball recoveries, 4th in defensive win shares. He's one of the most versatile defenders in the league, can guard pretty much everyone at 6'8".
Yeah.
Great perimeter defender. So I got him.
Certainly making a big impact on that OKC team. So, final question, who you got for the big award, MVP?
Once again, you can make an argument for a few players for this, such as James Harden, but I got Giannis Antetokounmpo of the Milwaukee Bucks. His stats in terms of points per game aren't Harden's. Harden's putting up 36. But Harden isn't that efficient, and Giannis is on the best team in the league, and his supporting cast isn't even that special. Brook Lopez is a good player. Malcolm Brogdon's a good player. Eric Bledsoe's good. But
Bucks are a deep team. They're a very deep team.
They are a deep team, but he's clearly leading them, and he might be the best player in the NBA right now. LeBron's kind of passed that torch, and Giannis is only 24 years old. He has great percentages, 58% from the field.
Well,
he's having a fantastic year.
He has had a fantastic year. Well, that's all the time we have left, but when we come back, we'll discuss the most confusing trades in professional sports.
There have been more than a few questionable moves around the world of sports. I'm joined by Luis Mueller and Zach Trophy to break down the most puzzling trades in the history of all sports. So, Zach, what is your most baffling trade?
Gonna have to go Kobe Bryant trade. Charlotte Hornets drafted Kobe Bryant with the 13th pick. At the time, the NBA lottery was only 12 picks. So it was actually out of the lottery. So they ended up shipping it off to Los Angeles and trade in exchange for Vlade Divac, who ended up only playing 2 years in Charlotte, averaged like 10 and 9. And I think
They gave up a Hall of Famer.
I think we all know what Kobe Bryant did.
I don't even know who that is, Vlade Divac. But mine is Babe Ruth, Red Sox to the Yankees. It's the curse of the Bambino. It is one of the most infamous curses in all of sports. And not only that, it's Babe Ruth. If you don't know who Babe Ruth is, you need to start watching sports.
So, why though? Was it because of the curse, or is it because it was the Babe?
It was because it was the Babe for $125,000. It was for starter money for a play. And then after that, on top of that, it's the curse. So the curse, 86 years with no World Series. Come on.
And with Kobe Bryant leaving Charlotte, originally before he said if they drafted him, he wanted to be traded. So do you think that it was the best career move? What do you think Bryant would have been the same player in Charlotte as he was in LA, or do you think that gave him more of a spectrum?
Skill-wise, I'm sure he'd be the same player, but I mean, the NBA wants him in a big market, a superstar like that in a big market. So having him in Los Angeles was huge for the NBA. And there was a lot of speculation. Maybe it was fixed a little bit or something. But Kobe Bryant came out and said that he believes that he wouldn't have played a lot on the Hornets, that the Hornets didn't really need him. So he really wanted to get traded and end up in LA, which is a great move for the NBA.
It definitely was. He became one of the focal points of the NBA. He's one of the most all-time greatest players in history. So, Luis, I know you have more trades. Are there any more that really catch your eye?
Of course. So the next one I got is Eric Lindros. He goes from Quebec Nordiques / Colorado Avalanche, because they were in transition at the time, to the Philadelphia Flyers. And there, yes, Eric Lindros is a Hall of Fame player. Yes, he played great in Philly, but the injury bug really plagued his career. And the the Flyers did not at all win a Stanley Cup during his career with the Philadelphia. And then Colorado went on to win 2 Stanley Cups with Peter Forsberg and Jocelyn Thibault, who was traded for Patrick Waugh, who was their star goalie.
So do you think that the championships were more affected by Bryant's trade, or do you think that the trade of Lindros really, in championship essence, do you think Bryant would have ever brought a championship?
Charlotte, no, but as far as the Lakers go, it did have Shaq, but the addition of Kobe with Shaq and that, I think Kobe's addition helped Shaq careers the most.
Lindros definitely wouldn't have brought a championship to Quebec or Colorado. They were already falling. They were a terrible franchise at the time, Quebec, and Lindros was already hurt by the injury bug. His career was plagued by it, and once he went to Philly, he definitely didn't bring one there, so why would he be able to bring one to a Colorado team or a Quebec team that was already failing?
So championships plagued by both cities that lost players. And that's all the time we have left, but when we return, Ennis and I will break down some of the most iconic moments in the history of basketball. The game of basketball has been one with multiple iconic moments that have made it in one of the most beloved sports in the world. Ennis, what shot has changed the game forever?
I'm going to say a shot that not a ton of people know about. I'm going to say Chris Ford with the Boston Celtics, 1979, the first three-pointer ever made. The game was just it was just boring without it. I mean it's just a ton of layups, people not really having any incentive to just shoot far away from the basket, and it's just like three-pointers, man, cash.
And now that transitioned to the college game a year later.
Absolutely.
Ronnie Carr, first ever three-pointer in 1980 at Western Carolina. They have the mark spot on their floor. Really iconic moment. Agree with that wholeheartedly.
Absolutely.
Mine, Ray Allen, Finals 2013. Rebound Bosch, kicks out Allen, his three. Bang! Tie game, 5 seconds remaining. So the most iconic call, I believe, transitioned into LeBron coming to LA. He won a ship, goes back to Cleveland a year later, wins a ship in his second year at Cleveland, decides, okay, I've had enough of this now. Now he's on the Lakers, goes to the finals. Full circle. Now out of my discussion for the GOAT because he's missing the playoffs this year.
I don't know about that. Well, that is all the time we have for this episode of One-on-One Sports.
Huge shout out goes to all our producers, crew, talent, and you, the viewer, for tuning in.
If you liked what you saw and you want to see more, be sure to check us out on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram, all on One-on-One Sports.
That's all from us here in the studio. So until next time,
Whose side are you on?